is Sarah, block editor. I'm here with AJ, BlockchainMeta, who is one of the new community council members. This series of interviews is designed to help citizens get to know their community council and community leads. So we are going to jump right into the first question for AJ. Start us off with your pre-crypto background and experience.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for having me. It's been a long time coming, obviously, since I first suggested this. It's weird that it's taken me this long to get on, but after all yeah, so it's been good. I'm glad that we're able to connect. I think you've done an amazing job with all the other ones that you've conducted. So firstly, I just want to thank you for taking the idea that I had in my mind and actually executing it to such a great level, because all the conversations that you've had felt very free flowing. And the whole idea was that I wanted to get to know the other members a little bit better. And I feel like a lot of times you can get that from the voice, their intonation, their demeanor a lot better than you can from someone writing something. And for me, when I was watching or hearing those recordings, that was really captured. And I think it's especially true. And this actually came because of Leigh Boomington. So Leigh Boomington, he and I had interacted in text for a long time, like a year plus, right? And I had this one idea of what he was like, right? And then I brought him into my marketing community, and he was doing this series I called Build in Public, where you just watch someone just do their work, essentially. So he was doing some video editing stuff, and there was a bunch of us just watching him, asking kind of some questions, and he was just the funniest person. Like during his Build in Public, he was just completely different from what I had in my mind of who he was in chat, in Discord, right? And so for me, that was just like, okay, voice adds a critical component that we don't really get when people are making one-liners. Because he's funny in chat too, but he was laugh out loud funny when we were doing that Build in Public. And he's planning on doing another one with my community in like a few weeks from now. So I'm looking forward to that. But essentially, the first, thank you for doing all of this. I know it's a lot of work.
First of all, you were spot on, because it's like people don't become people until you can have a voice at least put in them. All of the chats, you get an idea of personality, but same experience I've had doing this is you have no clue. You almost put a picture to somebody that you've heard talk, Yeah. Hopefully it's not their video avatar, but sometimes it is. But when they come up and you start talking to them, it's completely different picture, right? Like it's not the picture, like it makes sense, but it's still like, oh, like I get it now, but that's not what I had in my head. So it's important.
Yeah.
Go on. Give us your background.
Yeah, so the background, basically I went to school for electrical and computer engineering, and I knew when I was going in that I actually didn't want to do engineering full time. So I was looking at it from more of a business perspective. I planned on actually going on to get an MBA after that. While I was in undergrad, I was like, okay, what's my path to an MBA? And also I did want to start a company at some point. So when I went through college, I was thinking about, okay, who are the smartest people I can meet? And so I did the hardest major that I could to meet basically the smartest people that I could. And in that time, I actually, it was the engineering, especially electrical and computer engineering, is really hard. There are labs that take 6-7 hours to do. And so I'd be at college for a very long time. And one night, I think I came home late. It was maybe like 2 a.m. after I'd finished some labs. And around this time is when all the sketchy ads come on TV. And so I was just watching TV just to like relax a little bit before I slept. I think by the time I was done watching, it was maybe like 4 a.m. But at that time, there was this ad for making money online. And I was like, oh, this definitely sounds like a scam, but they did the ad well that I want to check it out, right? And so I started Googling this, and it was just page after page of like really good reviews about this program. And it was a bit weird because a lot of the reviews looked similar but different. So I still felt like something very sketchy was going on. So I kept going. I think I was on page 17 or something of Google, which I had never done in my life, right? Like when you search something on Google, you go to page 1, 2, or 3 and you're done. You usually find what you're looking for. But I was looking for something like more specific. And so page 17 is where I found the quote unquote real reviews. And so the real reviews talked about how people had lost tons of money on this this program, how there's a huge affiliate scheme with this program where affiliates make money for referring people into the ecosystem and things like that. So it's like, oh, that's what those first page reviews are. It's just people who don't even have the product. They just want to make a quick buck, right? And are doing this. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting, but like, I don't want to be involved with any part of this, right? Like, I don't want to be involved with scamming people. But down that line of just like, are there legitimate ways to make money online? That's kind of what it sent me on a quest to find. And so I just learned as much as I could about all sorts of digital marketing stuff, and just started writing in forums, like trying to find anyone who's legitimate, because there's a lot of fake people out there. And so I was learning about SEO, I was learning about affiliate marketing, I was learning about all these things. And so I had a little bit of a start with building out my own website. So someone that I met on one of these forums, actually, who I've never met in person, he goes by Blue Rhino. That's all I know him as. He and I actually started something together where we built a website, and we were able to get it ranked in Google pretty highly. And so it was making some money, and it was essentially like you could see the month-to-month progression, where it was $0 the first month, and then it was like $20 the next month, and then it was like $500 the month after that, and then $900 after that. So it was cool because you could see that as you're getting more traffic, you continue to like make more money essentially. So he and I actually sold that site for about 13 grand. And this was while I was still in college doing engineering. So I was like, oh, okay, there are legitimate ways to make money online. There's actually a vast amount of opportunity in this field. So I got so enamored by what could be there. And you could do this at home, right? I'd never met this person in real life during that time. And so a lot of pieces just came together for me. And I said, okay, this is something that I really want to do. And so in college, I started another company. It wasn't like an official company. I didn't have that much money. I didn't know what I was doing, right? So I just did what's known as a DBA, doing business as. So you can still be your own self, and then you could just call yourself a business essentially and start closing clients that way. So I made this website about Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty, and I don't like first-person shooters at all, but I saw that this game had huge opportunity because everyone in college was talking about it. There was so much hype around it. I was like, oh, people are going to want to do this, right? So it was funny because the way that I got started was I asked a bunch of my friends, I'm like, yo, I don't know anything about this game. I need your help to help me put together some of the best stuff that we can for this game. I want you to do some recordings. I want you to help people with walkthroughs, all the stuff that you would normally do for other games. And so I got a bunch of friends to agree. And so in order, the main investment that I made was actually just buying the capture card for the PlayStation or Xbox, whatever they played it on, and it was like $90, right? So then with that, I was able to get that. We created a YouTube channel, and then we started putting out content. So there's some cool stories I can go off into that, but it just shows that like I got my stuff early, and then since then, you know, fast forward many years, over a decade, right? And so I wanted to do something with a company, but I actually got a really good offer from a startup in Boston. So I actually shut down my company to work for them as a growth hacker. So as a growth hacker, I'm basically doing a mix of marketing and engineering. And so my degree is not in computer science, which is significantly different than computer engineering, where it's more the hardware stuff than it is the software side. But I learned a lot of the software side myself because I wanted to make marketing faster. What I found was a lot of marketers, they're copying and pasting things from Google, right? They're like, you go do this search, then you have to go do this. It's like 8 hours of really boring work. So it's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so that's where computer science makes a huge difference, because I used to write Python scripts that would just scrape websites, put a lot of data together for us, and then we'd be able to decide on clients and things like that. So I had an SEO company for a bit, worked at the startup for a bit. That startup got acquired, and they got acquired by a company. So Boston actually acquired a company in California. And so that was my opportunity to move to San Francisco. I went to San Francisco, worked for a bit also in the startup scene, worked at another startup for a little bit, and then I started my marketing agency. So that marketing agency is now 7-ish years old. Marketing agency was primarily helping e-commerce companies do paid advertising. And this is where all of my come from, you know, over $100 million revenue generated for these clients. And so I basically help them from nothing to being able to grow to have $10 million run rate or whatever their goals are. It's depending on how much money they raise or like if they want to be profitable year one, things like that. There's a lot of factors there, but primarily I've stayed within the marketing scope, even though I was doing engineering the whole time, but it's always been a mix of the two. And then, so pre-crypto is an interesting question because for me, I bought my first Bitcoin actually in 2014. So it's pretty early, but and so at the time, I was just a few years out of college, and one of my friends told me about it, and he's a very, very smart person, but he's also like a hermit. He doesn't like to, interact with many other people. He doesn't trust government. He doesn't trust a lot of these things. So he's a very unique character, but he was very, very pro this. And so I've never seen him be pro anything. And I didn't have a lot of time, a lot of money at the time. I had maybe like 30K net worth, right? And so I didn't have a whole lot of money to invest into Bitcoin, but I think I bought like two ish, and at the time that would have been probably be like 10% of my net worth, something like that, right? And so it was a risky investment to some degree, but because of the type of person that he was and the amount of conviction that he had, I was like, okay, I have to make this investment, right? So I don't remember my purchase price, but it was probably around like $700 to $1,000 ish. On that front. And so once it started going up, I actually sold a lot of it on its rise. So like I sold a good portion of it before it hit the previous peak of like 17K, 18K, 19K. And I was happy because I was like, right after that previous 19K peak, it just flubbed. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm good. Yeah. So with that happening, I wanted to be in the ecosystem because it was just like such a big return compared to anything else that I've done. So I actually took some of those profits and put a bunch of it into Ethereum as well. And so my Ethereum story is much sadder because it was one of those things where I did have a lot even coming into buying Neo Tokyo, right? I had in my wallet probably close to 100 ETH, maybe a little bit less than that. So I was like, okay, cool, 100 ETH when you're doing, when ETH is like 4,500 is a lot of money to just have. So I was just throwing money at various things. And now my portfolio is probably like 2 ETH, right? So it's like, it's a huge dwindle because much of it is invested in assets or these nodes or stuff that didn't really go anywhere. But luckily for me, a lot of that was coming from profit, so it didn't feel like it was a massive loss. But coming back to the original question of the pre-crypto side, it was mostly around marketing, engineering, stuff like that.
Got it. Okay, so you touched on Neo Tokyo, and you're all the way back in 2014 for Bitcoin, so we got an OG here. Give us a story of how you got into Neo Tokyo.
Yeah, Neo Tokyo. Like, it was, so I had known Alex Becker through, not personally, but just known of him through the marketing sphere because he has his company or that he sold, Hyros. And so when we were doing paid advertising, Hyros is one of the contenders for what we would use to track our ads. At the time that I evaluated them, the support wasn't very good and they didn't have great features for the single page apps. So a lot of pages that are done on React and kind of are in one place, they didn't have great solutions for that. So we ended up only using them with one client, but I knew of him through that. And so I was in this Hyros Facebook group that he has where he posts somewhat regularly at the time. And so this is like, maybe 2018, 2019 that he's been posting a lot, even probably 2020. And so when Neo Tokyo was there, I was like, oh, Alex Becker, I've heard of this guy. I've seen some of his work and his company Hyros is doing pretty well. And so I know that he has the marketing prowess to make something great, right? So he has that potential. So when I heard about Neo Tokyo, I was like, okay, I'm interested when he was just teasing a lot of the things. And so all the riddles that came out, at the time, I was actually making a decent amount of money on other things. So I was in all these paid alpha groups. I was in all this other stuff. So it seemed more like a distraction for me to manually do the riddles and things like that. And, like I told you, right, I was riding high with my 100 ETH, and I was like, okay, most of the projects, what happened was as soon as they released, if you wait a few days, the price goes way down. So there's a lot of projects that I was like, if I'm interested or I want to support the founder, or I want to be in the community, I'll just wait a few days after the launch and then pick it up for cheap. Or if I can mint it and get it, great. Like I'll mint it and get it. And so I thought the same flow to go for Neo Tokyo, because I'd already been a part of these other projects that I'd buy later, and then I sell them when they actually did go up in value. And so I did ask around in a lot of the alpha groups that I was a part of. It's like, hey, is anyone solving these riddles? And there were a lot of people trying, but no, people weren't getting anywhere. So I was like, okay, never mind. I'll just buy it on secondary. So I was very closely following the project, and I was like, okay, let me see right after it launches, let me see what the price is. I was expecting maybe like a 0.3 ETH, something like that. It was that was around what a lot of the other projects were going for. So I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll wait for that. And then immediately after the launch, 5 ETH. That was the floor. I was like, I was like, what did I do? And so I was waiting for a few more days, and the price only went up. So it was like next day, 6 ETH, 7 ETH, 8 ETH. So I was like, all right, I guess I have to take the plunge and get in before I miss this opportunity. Also because what Becker had put out in one of his videos about crypto gaming was the exact same hypothesis that a lot of us had, but I had created a video for my team about a month earlier that said more or less the same thing about how crypto gaming has this huge opportunity to rise, and how there's a lot of good builders and founders in this space. Getting to know them and getting to build with them is going to be the future, essentially, especially for stuff that I'm interested in. And so since all of those things aligned, I was like, I have to be a part of this community, because it is very true to my thesis that I had in investing in this space. And so, yeah, I think I paid 30 grand for my Citizen, something around there. And then there's the launch of like elite citizens and stuff like that. I was like, do I have to be elite? And so I was on this like edge for a while, but eventually I was like, all right, yeah, let's do it. If I'm going in, I might as well go all in on this. So that was another 40 grand, something like that, to upgrade to elite. And so obviously it's worth a lot less now, but I've made good friends along the way, and I don't regret it for a moment. I never really bought my Citizen to resell. That wasn't the goal. The goal was really to understand who are the best builders in the space. Can we get in on some early opportunities? Can I help them with some of their marketing? I've seen a lot, especially in my previous Web2 business, is that there's some really, really good founders who can execute like crazy on product, but they're terrible at marketing. They can't get their great product out into the world. And they still have this mentality of, if I build it, they will come. And unfortunately, with all the noise in the world today, that's just not the case in most scenarios. And so I thought that this could be a great way for me to be at the forefront of helping some of these great products come to market and helping them kind of learn and do all this stuff. So that's kind of my vision of how I entered into Neo Tokyo, and why I paid so much, and why I still don't mind that I paid so much to get in.
That's awesome. I know we all want to just pick your brain on marketing projects, because it really is the hardest thing. I mean, well, I'm sure developing them is really hard, but I have no clue. But when it comes to marketing, there's so many aspects and so many, trails we can travel that just go nowhere. It just gets really confusing. So I think everyone's glad you're in Neo Tokyo.
Thanks.
Bring me up to, what do you spend most of your time working on now? Is there a specific project? We know you're in marketing. Do you have a couple focus projects? What's it look like?
Pretty much all of my work time goes to onchainmarketer.com, which is a community I've been building for the last year and a half plus. The idea is, and actually one of the testimonials I have is from Winston, who's part of it. He says, it's like having a 24/7 marketing think tank at your fingertips. I think that's a really good description of it. There's basically two different types of people that are a part of this group on On-Chain Marketer. One section is the marketers themselves. So you have to go through an application process. There's a lot of questions, and then also you have to be a good fit for the community, have complementary skill sets and things like that. And so it's a carefully curated, slowly grown group of really good marketers, basically. So we have people who are really good at Twitter/X growth. We have people who are really good at copywriting. We have people who are really good at video editing. We have people who are really good at writing and content creation. So there's a lot of cool skill sets that different marketers have, but we have people who are just super specialized in certain areas. And so that's one segment of the audience. And then the other segment of the paid community are the founders. So this was something that was released more recently in 2024. And the idea with the founders tier is that projects can come in, they can bring a few members of their key marketing team, and they can exchange ideas with the other people that are part of the program and with the marketers. So there's a lot of events that we hold within the community, and I personally run many of them. And by the end of the year, we'll have more than 50 hours of content. We already have a ton. Recently, I did a 3-hour video where people can chime in with their videos on how I built the landing page and get all that stuff together. Recently had a call where it was about an hour and a half, and we were basically dissecting marketing plans. So that's one of the benefits for the founders as well. When they join, we'll basically take apart their marketing plan and tell them, you missed this. You should have been working on, getting the engagement first before you try to scale out. Or we would say things like, the goals that you set are not really going to help you in actually bringing the product to market and hitting what you need to hit in order to have a successful marketing campaign and things like that. So it's awesome to be able to just dissect everything, tear it apart, and then say, here's kind of the right way to do it. And then these are the right people that can really help you get to that next stage of growth. And yeah, it's a lot about curating the right people, curating the right events, and making sure that it's super high value for everyone that joins. And that's where pretty much all of my time is going. And I'm brainchilding a lot of different content. So there's a few things that I've been working on in terms of reading books and then being able to turn them into processes that founders and marketers can use. So yeah, if anyone listening to this is a founder or a marketer, definitely reach out to me. It's currently invite only, and on the marketer side, it's application only, but I'm happy to chat more and give you the details on that. And it's been a lot of fun for me because, especially building in the bear, I think it's a lot easier to find people who are actually in it to get better at their craft and basically trying to push to be the best and really hone their craft and do all the good stuff that we'd expect, versus people who are just there for a quick flip or if crypto's up or anything like that. So I think it's been really awesome to have that community who's been through the tough times, which makes it now a lot easier for us to work through the good times.
So I wanted it to be something different than that, something bigger than that. And so luckily for me, I have a lot of contacts that work at several big companies. So I'm bringing in people that worked at Meta, who worked on the NFT launch within Instagram, for example. And so I have someone that works at Google. I have someone that works at Deloitte, stuff like that. So there are these companies that people that don't necessarily spend all their time on Discord, but have so much knowledge to bring to the space and also to share in their experience. And that's essentially what I'm building in now. And so it's meant to be kind of a slow build where I'm trying to recruit people that I think would mesh well together, but also people that have so much knowledge that it could almost be like a Hormozy style approach to marketing. Because what I've found with Web3 marketers is that a lot of them don't know what they're doing. And either they come from knowing something in Web2 that doesn't really work that well in Web3, or someone was just like, hey, here, manage the socials, right? That's how a lot of the paths have been. And there's no great way to learn marketing. And so my idea is to build this network of great people that have actual experience, having worked with successful projects and are working on making some great things. They share all of their experience. We can package a lot of that into content that we'll put out there into the open world so that other people who are either aspiring marketers or are marketers that are looking for like new perspectives can learn something and trust the source. Basically, we want to be a trusted source for marketers and not have to resort to those scammy tactics, right? There are a lot of scammy-ish tactics that work really well, but I think part of it is integrity. So staying true to being, you don't have to be spamming everyone on the Discord with a bunch of these bots that you buy in order to make your project successful, right? If you can just narrow down your focus to the right target audience that really wants whatever you're offering, there's certain tried and true methodologies that people just don't know. So they just resort to whatever they can, like buying Twitter followers and buying all this stuff, right? There's a lot of bad things that happen in the space. And I've talked to some of the people who have done this. And a lot of the times, like founders have done this, and they'll tell me, I'll bring it up to them, like in my very first meeting with them, because those type of companies I tend not to work with anyway. So because I told you, like I reject in the advisorship itself, right? I reject about 80% of the projects. A lot of them are not because they're bad projects, but maybe because they're trying to do too much in too little time, or their expectations are a little bit off of what someone can accomplish in that time. And those projects unfortunately tend to fail. But one of the founders I talked with before I went into the meeting, I looked at their Discord and their Twitter, and I could see that the engagement numbers were like way different than what normal metrics would show. And so I ran a couple of them through these bot testers, and it was like 99% bots or something like that. And so I was upfront to them, and I was like, listen, why is your Twitter filled with these bot followers? And he was like, oh, you noticed that? Yeah, apparently, like we talked to 3 different marketing people, and they all said that this is what you need to do to close these collabs. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, no one should be giving you that advice, and you shouldn't be paying for that type of advice. So that's kind of what fueled me further to want to work on On-Chain Marketer, which will give actually good advice to people that you don't have to do it in a sketchy way.
We talked about this in the PRP chat a little bit the other day, because I was posing the question of like, where does marketing go next? Because those scammy influencer tactics and the buying Twitter followers, people are onto it. It's over. Like we were trying to figure like what now? So I'm going to rephrase the next question, which is, what's your strongest area of expertise? And I think we got that now. It's marketing. But instead of giving us that, why don't you give us, I don't know, two or three focus points for people to start out? Maybe they're not ready to blow money on marketing yet. What should they be looking at if they're testing the waters on marketing first?
Yeah. So I think there's a few different things. So if you're a founder, I would say the most common advice that I give in terms of marketing is to narrow in on a focus. So be more niche oriented so that you can attract the right people. And then make sure that you build a list of either communities or places that you can go to that are like-minded. So like basically attracting the right audience is going to be very useful. And then the next thing is to be able to utilize referrals the best way in Web3, because Web3 is really about like, hey, my friend told me about this Discord and I want to join in, right? So that has a lot more power than even those bots that just spam everybody like, oh, make $1 million by joining this crypto, whatever, right? So you want to be able to convey your value prop in such a way that a friend wants to share it. Like that's kind of the goal that I start to get people into the mindset of. How can you make your offering so good and communicate that to all the people that are already bringing in, so that every one person that you bring in can bring in an additional person. So if you start with that mindset, a lot of the marketing strategies kind of just like play out themselves, right? And then you'll have the more typical stuff of people doing AMAs and stuff like that. But I've seen people get lost where they lose that focus and they're like, we just need to do this for the sake of doing it, and they're not into it. But when they're actually passionate and they look at, these are the people that we want to actually attract, and then we're going to have something that they want to share with their friends, that goes a long way. For marketers that are looking to actually help these different projects, I would say that a lot of it comes to understanding where their knowledge gaps are, because there's a lot of projects that I've talked to that come from Web 2 that may think that this is the way that Web 3 is, and they have like a sample project in mind. They'll be like, oh, I saw that Pixelmon did it like this, and I want to do it exactly like this. So you need to be able to understand where they're coming from and then show them the reality of what happened, right? Like post Pixelmon, because many of these people, they only follow it to a certain time, and then they're just like, that is their vision of that project, and they use that as their model. And so you need to show them that the model is now different, right? That it's a little bit more unique. So I would say that for marketers, try to understand first and don't try to execute first. This is the most common thing that I see. And I've heard feedback from founders as well. The founders will sometimes just give the social logins to their people and be like, go at it, like there's no real plan. But for marketers, the thing that you want to do is actually create a 6-week plan. So you want to actually know concentrated, like, what am I going to do in week 1? What's the focus in week 2? Focus in week 3, things like that. And a good friend who I believe is in our server, his name is Alex. He has a pretty good template for how to go about this. So it's like week 1, maybe you focus on reactivation. If you already have a Discord, you want to try to re-engage as many people as you can, and then start doing the riddles or whatever you want to have as your user acquisition flow. But I would say that's the biggest thing that's going to make a difference, is that instead of playing it by ear, because when the project starts and really starts to take off, there's a million things that come together and you're not going to have time to plan. Planning goes completely out the window. So if you do it ahead of time and you can kind of maintain that 6-week window moving forward, you can deal with almost everything, and you can actually build your own hype cycles, because you can put in announcements as you need, right? And you can start to essentially space out what things you're communicating to the user at what time, versus I see now a lot of people is like, oh, we just got this license today, and then they'll post it today, right? You having that license today doesn't necessarily need to be a post right away. You could fit it into your grand plan and things like that. So those are the main things I would say for both sides of that equation.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. All right, next question. What do you absolutely hate working on?
Yeah, I hate the administrative stuff. I kind of mentioned it about to the marketing side, and how I do a lot of the edge that I have in marketing is that I also can do a little bit of programming. So making bots to do anything that can help me streamline my workflow. And that's why I love, Sarah, you and I were on that AI discussion recently with Mark, right? There's a lot of tools that can help streamline how much work you have to put in. And if it's the boring work, then I'm all for that, right? I hate the boring work of moving this data from here to here, or massaging this into something that does whatever. I
wanted his list after that call. I was like, where's the list? I saw you asked for it. I was like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a lot of that stuff, it's cool that now you could get AI to do some of it for you. Before I had to do it myself, right? So if I, for example, even with my SEO company, when I was figuring out what client to go after, I actually turned this into a process. I was like, okay, what are the best clients to go after? Well, you want people who have a lot of money, but you also want people who are getting searched a lot on Google, because otherwise you can be on page 1, but if no one's searching for your very specific tattoos of, I don't know, whatever company, right? Then you're not really going to get much value from being on that page 1. So I wrote a script that basically looks at Google for all of these keywords. So I took the US census data on professions, and it gave a list of 200 or so. And then I took the census data on all the cities in the US. So it would be Burlington, Mass, whatever. And so it would just mix and match things together. So it would search for dentist in Burlington, Mass dentist. And it would just do those combos, and it would show what got the most searches. And so from there, dentist was actually one of the niches that I went after, because that was one that people were searching for a lot, and they make a lot of money, right? And so they're willing to pay for some of those SEO services. Photographers showed up on that list of high search, but sometimes they don't make as much money, so that they might not be as good of a target and things like that. So I think any of the administrative work I don't like doing, and I would usually either pass it off to somebody else or try to write something if it's going to be something that I know that I'll have to do continually. The one area where I haven't been able to do this is my taxes, unfortunately, and I absolutely hate doing that. I have to compile all of the stuff, and even though I have an accountant, I still have to give him all of the data. I have to download the W-2s and all this stuff, and yeah, that's one area where I'm still like dreading it, thinking about it.
That's a dirty word. It gives me anxiety when anybody talks about taxes. I need a moment. All right, let's move on. What have you done for or inside of Neo Tokyo, or what are you most known for here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, since I bought my identity, I was basically able to be with most of the day one minters. And so I felt like I was actually rising up with them. It's just that I had to pay a lot more than they did to be a part of the same community. And so I was able to mint my vault and my item cache and LAN and things like that. So during that time, I knew that this was a community that I wanted to be a part of. And since I had a lot of ETH, I actually ended up buying a ton of bytes. So like to this day, I've spent over 100K in buying bytes, and I actually haven't sold like almost any of that from what I had originally bought. And during a time where bytes were going crazy, my usual investment thesis, I cash out a little bit at a 2x and then a little bit at 3x, and then I sell most of it around like a 4x or 5x. And so I had that plan going in with bytes as well, but because it was such a like integral part of the community at that time, and because I owned so much of the liquidity, me selling my bytes would have crashed the price by a significant portion. Like it would have completely destroyed that curve that we had, going up, which maybe today would have been a good thing. But at the time I was like, oh no, I can't do this. So I let my emotion get the best of me, and I didn't sell that. And I actually instead provided a lot of that bytes as liquidity so that other people could buy a lot of those bytes. And so in that process, there's a lot of ways to actually earn money from providing liquidity, because you earn interest when people buy or sell things. So I created this whole series of liquidity providing and how people can make money doing that. And so I opened it up as an alpha contest to citizens first. And so there are people who can submit like why they wanted access to that content and stuff like that. And so I made a lot of different types of content around that. Even when the games were happening, during the UAEC bike run, the scores weren't submitting in some cases, and people were freaking out because they're not sure if their score was actually sent to the server or not. So I made a video about that, saying, here's how you check, like open up your developer tools and do this. And so that video within the community, because the community at that time was maybe like 2,000 people, I think 1,200 people had seen that video. So it was like, it got a huge reach within the sub community. So at that time, I was very well known for that type of content, like helping people. And these videos were private, unlisted, essentially, and they're only made for citizens. And it was cool because when I was in Singapore, I got added to one of these WhatsApp groups. So it's cool because lots of these different countries actually have their own private groups for just citizens in that country. And Singapore, Malaysia has the joint group, essentially. So I got it added to that. And my name's AJ on just my WhatsApp stuff. And they're like, oh, hey, what's your Discord name? And I was like, BlockchainMeta. And then a ton of people were like, yo, you're BlockchainMeta. That's awesome. Like, I saw your video on this. And it was cool. It was like a mini celebrity within this mini group. So that's one thing that I'm still proud of to this day, that I'm glad that I did that. There's a lot of stuff that I've done for individual citizens as well, like helping them on their projects, ideas on marketing and things like that. And then I've also met a lot of citizens in person. So Felix was someone that I connected with very early on, maybe within like the first week of me getting into the Citadel, maybe the second week, I don't know. But he and I, we just had very similar vibes in terms of like, he's a very good person and he has very good intentions. He's very smart, right? So he's someone that I wanted to know better and also potentially work on stuff together because we had complementary skill sets, right? He's very good on the dev side, I'm very good on the marketing side. So I was like, oh, there's a lot of opportunity for us to really do something joint. And so I actually flew out just to meet him to Portugal. And so that was one of those things that I've met. So everywhere, during the time I was traveling a lot, so everywhere I went, I would always post into Metaverse Lounge or to Purgatory to say, hey, I'm going to be in, for example, the first time I was here in Seattle, I posted, and there were a few citizens that reached out. So I met with them. And then when I was in London, there were 3 citizens that I met there. So it was cool for me to just like get face-to-face time. And what was awesome about that is that it felt like we were already friends, even though we had never met each other. And some of the people that came out, they actually hadn't even chatted that much in chat. So I didn't know much about their personalities at all. They were just like, hey, I'm in London. But we went to a bar or something, and immediately we're like, we have shared regrets, right? We have shared losses. We have shared trauma.
Shared trauma. That's the one that I get a lot.
Yeah. So those were one of the things that I think made it really awesome. And a few other things I would say, I've spoken at a few Citadel events. I was there for the AMA with Gala Games. I was there, Becker's first roundtable, where we were there with Warren and Felix. And then, yeah, I have actually, if I had more time, I would dig out some testimonials for you, because I like to save some of these. There's one that said something like, thanks to BlockchainMeta, who blew my mind with his advice, or something like that. So there's a lot of like cool content that I've collected over the years that I'll probably use in some, landing page at some point. It's not up anywhere yet, but most recently, I would say with the council, I've also helped kind of navigate the goal setting. So when I came into the council, and this, like, there's a ton of random-ish proposals, right? And so for me, I felt like I had no way as a new council member to sort what is important, what's not important. Like, how do I even gauge this to see if it's worth doing for us? And so in that meeting, I brought that up, and I was like, I think we should go through this process of really figuring out what are we trying to achieve as a group, and what are the main goals that we're really focused on. And so that I think has helped a lot, because now we have these goals that probably will be released to the community, and kind of narrowed down so everyone can focus with the same lens, that it's like, hey, we want to provide the best value for all of the people that are within Neo Tokyo, provide all that utility, but we also want to attract the best talent that still fits within our niche. Those 2 guiding principles will help with a lot of the proposals that are coming through, and how we structure whether we go through with the proposal or for new ideas as well. Even for me, like, once we've set the goals, I was creating ideas only to fit those goals, and I felt like the ideas were a lot better flowing as a result of that.
The Leeds Council chat was a lot when I hopped in, but I was very impressed to see you come in and like throw down structure, because it was hard to follow. It was just these random things going on, but I think it's already flowing really well in there. So you kind of said this a little bit, but why did you want to join the Leeds Council? What was the motivation for that?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of little pieces that led me to want to join. I've always wanted to contribute to Neo Tokyo, and I have, like, with the videos and with individual chats, like I mentioned. But in order to influence the Citadel as a whole, I think what happened in the past was that there wasn't, like, Becker wanted us to do stuff, but citizens wanted Becker to do stuff. And there was almost like this standoff, right? The citizens who did want to do things, they didn't have enough power to use the Neo Tokyo name. And so there's a lot of these issues that happen. And I'm glad that Becker realized that that's not really the way to, like, just like bring people together and just say go, but don't give them any power, right? And so with Firestorm entering the mix and there being the actual structure and someone that can, like, move things forward and even communicate to Becker instead of us, like, 10 people tagging Becker and then waiting for a reply, right? That with that structure in place, I thought, okay, maybe there's something that we could actually do, right, as citizens. And so that was one thing that I was like, okay, now is a chance for me to, like, help the Citadel. It's obviously a project that's very near and dear to my heart, not just because I put in a lot of money, but because I've met a lot of great friends along the way here, right? Felix now is going to be a lifelong friend of mine, and there's a ton of other people that I've met through either Felix or through the Citadel, Mad King, Tristan, Le Boomington, right? There's a ton of people. And then another big factor for me was actually Damon. So Damon is someone that I respect wholeheartedly. I actually roomed with him when we stayed together in Oakland to save some money of staying in California. And so we were bunking together. We had separate rooms, but 3 of us actually. Teglas was also there. But I kind of asked Damon point blank. I was like, man, you've been putting in like a year of your life into Neo Tokyo with no pay. Like, what is driving you? You know, like, why are you doing this? Because it's a lot to ask of anyone for anything, you know? And so I'll let Damon give his version of the answer because I won't do it justice. But essentially, like his vision around what he wants Neo Tokyo to be and how he believes different people from all sorts of different places can come together into Neo Tokyo, and to make that happen, if he needs to be the point person, like he'll still take on that role and make that happen. It just was very inspiring, I would say. And for me, I was like, okay, if there are people like this that care this much about an organization, right? And he's not the only one. There's a lot of other people who are ride or die for Neo Tokyo, right? With that much conviction, is like, this is a community that's definitely worth being a part of and worth adding some structure into. Because one of the issues that he expressed very often, because we had many late night chats, like we would go off, do our own thing for the events that were happening in SF, and then we'd come back together and we would debrief, right? He'd tell me about his day, I tell him about my day, we tell about the different citizens that we met, like what our impressions of them were and things like that. But something that came up very often was that the idea of accomplishing a lot of things with just volunteers is actually really difficult, right? Especially when a lot of those volunteers have different individual motivations. They don't have kind of a united front. Maybe there's some barriers on what they can actually do and things like that. So for me, it was kind of an opportunity to say, okay, like if that is a problem that you're having and I can actually help in like solving that problem and maybe getting things through, like let me come and do that, right? And so I saw the community council as a way to do that. The reason I didn't sign up for the leads is because I hate mandatory meetings, to be honest. So I wasn't a fan of the idea that I had to be there for every meeting. But since I've been back, I have been there for every meeting. So it's kind of funny how that worked out. But I do like that, you know, for me, like a lot of this is I want to, the structure part was one big thing, because I think that is something that naturally makes people, even if they're volunteers, be like, oh, I really like this goal of acquisition. I'm only going to focus on proposals for this, right? And so it gets people into that mindset of I can help in the way that I want to, and still push the Citadel forward, versus before when it's like, oh, anyone can do anything at your own time, doing whatever, right? And Damon was also writing a ton of articles, and he, like, I remember one night he was stressed, like, shoot, I didn't beat the deadline for this article that I have to go. I'm like, wait, where are these deadlines coming from, man? Like, you're not getting paid for this. But he's like, no, I have to get my content submitted, Tokyo News, like, we have to do this. So it was just so different from my way of thinking that I was like, all right, like, I think adding a little bit of something that is not really corporate, but something that's a little bit more structured and a little bit more like, I wouldn't say revenue focused, but really like organization focused might help quite a bit. And that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to come in. And I guess to sum it up, like, in some ways to help Damon, but also to help the Citadel.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, here's your question that has thrown a lot of people. Which one word do you want people to strongly associate with you?
Yeah, so this is funny because I wrote that question, and I wanted it to be a way for me to quickly be able to tell, like, who do I go for if I need design? Who do I go to if I need any type of help in video or whatever? And then when you conducted the interviews, the answers were nothing related to that. I
couldn't get it. I knew what you wanted, but it just wasn't happening.
So, I mean, for me, I think I'll still stick to my original intent and just say marketing. Like, if anyone needs anything on marketing, that's my go-to. But I do really appreciate all the other words that people came up with, like feisty and things like that. And it's awesome. Like, it's cool to see how that question just kind of evolved.
I decided to be flexible after the first few interviews.
Yeah, and I'm glad you are, because it also did help me get like a feel of the person, right? Which was still like the underlying goal. And that one word, a lot of times people chose the one that was kind of like most important to them, or the one that represents them best, or the way that they see themselves the most. So I like that. I appreciated it. I think we'll have to do a second round where we're like, what skill do you associate yourself with the most? Maybe that'll get better results.
I think it's pretty obvious from the interviews. I could probably just add that in, actually.
Yeah.
Now they're rolling. Okay, final question. Tell us a little something about you that others may identify with, hobbies, outside interests, anything outside of what you do daily.
Yeah, the hobbies that I have are a lot around gaming. I think many people in the Citadel obviously associate with gaming, and it was part of my thesis of like why I think that gaming within the crypto sphere would be very useful, because I spent hundreds of dollars on skins, right? In PoE, I spent, I think, $300 on various things just to look cool and to have more stash space or whatever, right? Brawl Stars is a mobile game that I play. I spent, I think, like $200 buying gems to be able to buy more characters and things like that. So I'm definitely in that like sphere of gacha and like, you know, microtransactions where I'm the consumer of that. And so if I had a way to resell some of that, that would be awesome. So gaming is a big focus of mine. I also do like board games quite a bit. So almost every week, I have a lot of friends that are scattered around the US. And sometimes we play with people across the world as well, but it's not as common. But we use Board Game Arena, where if you premium membership, man, board games are on like a different dollar value. It's like you only pay $3 a month for premium membership, and you basically have access to all of the premium games that are board games. So you can host a game together, 4 people, 6 people, whatever the game kind of fits. So I like doing that. When I was living in SF, I used to actually host a lot of game nights that were more focused on deception-based games. So I really like the games like Mafia, you know, Avalon, and then there's one called Blood on the Clock Tower that I really like. So those type of social games where people can come together, I really like, because it's not just about the nerdy, you know, move these pieces type thing. It's like anyone can get involved. And you also get to see different sides of people when they're trying to be tricky and like lie when they're not usually used to lying, and things like that. So for me, that's a lot of fun. Recently, we've been doing a lot of sports activity stuff as well. So we play a little bit of basketball. I'm not very good at all. We just kind of shoot around. And then I like playing tennis a lot. I played in high school, and I'm trying to get back into it. I have a little bit of a knee problem, so it's not as good as it used to be, but I still enjoy it. And I try to go out there and play.
Amazing. All right. That was a lot of fun. I'm going to close this out. That was AJ, BlockchainMeta, one of your newest community council members. You can reach out to him on Discord, especially if you need advice on your marketing. And these will be posted online on the Neo-Tokyo news site at neotokyocode.com and somewhere else in Discord. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you so much.